Hello, everybody. This is Barney Stroum, and welcome to You Think You Know the Red Sox. And this is our regular Sunday morning podcast. We go back in time and talk about Red Sox teams of the past, reviewing them chronologically from uh, my earliest remembrances of the Red Sox were 1959, and then we're now up to 1976. 1976 was an interesting season. When I started to go back and do a little homework to make sure that my memories of that season weren't false, I didn't have a lot of memories of 76 because when you think about that era of Red Sox baseball, the first thing that comes to mind is 67. The second one would be 75 on how we lost two World Series in 7 games. Of course, then you automatically think about a 78 when they lost the playoffs. And you don't think about 76 too much. And I had to do a little more research about 76 than I did in previous seasons because, like I said, I don't remember much about the season, but I do remember following it. So we're going to start here in a moment. One of the things I want to mention as I take a sip of my Sunday morning coffee, everyone's having a relaxing weekend. Anyway, to make a long story short, this may be a two-part podcast because a lot happened in 76. And what's really funny is I don't remember a lot of it, but as I was reading about it, I did remember a lot of it. I just had to jog my memory. When you go back to 76, the first thing you have to remember is how 75 ended. The Red Sox came within one victory of winning the World Series, and Carlton Fisk's dramatic Game 6 home run had become an iconic moment in baseball by then because it must have been shown 10,000 times on TV and must have been shown 100,000 times by this season, 2026. Red Sox had an up and down season in 1976. Louis Tiant was entering the season after his dramatic 75 season where he garnered so much publicity for his delivery and for some of his iconic games that he pitched. Let's see. I got to handle that. Okay. There was a little text from my son I had to handle. Okay. Back to the podcast. Anyway, Carl Yastrzemski once again in 75 and 76 showed why he was the captain of the team. Boston had pushed Cincinnati in 75, which Cincinnati in 75, you got to remember, one of the greatest teams in modern baseball. They pushed it to the limit. And it wasn't until the ninth inning of Game 7 that Cincinnati finally pulled ahead. The Reds came away from that series believing the Red Sox were not just built to contend, but they thought the Reds had a lot of nice things to say about the Red Sox. And I remember Pete Rose talking about the Red Sox and how good they were going to be in 76. So that's how we remember the beginning of 76 is that off the 75 World Series, we were expecting a big season, and it just didn't happen. The Red Sox in 76 were never in it, although they were expected to win. Darryl Johnson was returning as the manager. He was a nice, low, soft-spoken guy. It didn't cause much controversy as a Dick Williams had in 67 and 68 and 69 when he was loud and outspoken. Yastrzemski was entering his 16th major league season in 76. And he was no longer the Triple Crown threat he once was, but he still was a good hitter and a clutch hitter. You had Carlton Fisk behind the plate, one of the best catchers in baseball. Center field was Fred Lynn off his AL MVP and Rookie of the Year season, which no one had accomplished both those awards in the same season prior to Freddie. And everybody, including myself, thought that this was going to be a great team. And one of the biggest reasons was Jim Rice. Jim Rice turned out to be one of the most explosive hitters over the 10-year period of time, 75 to 84. And there was no reason to think in 76 was not going to be a big season for him. And when you look at the team, they also had a young outfielder by the name of Dwight Evans in right field, who, although not as heralded a offensive threat as Rice and Lynn, Evans was every much a bit of a superstar when it came to defense in right field. He was also pretty good at the bat, but his defense is what everyone remembers. Rick Burleson was the shortstop now instead of Rico Petrocelli, and everybody would agree that Burleson was a spark plug of a shortstop and was a much better fielder than Petrocelli, although Petrocelli had moved to third base and Doyle and Griffin were at second. Tiant was leading the pack as it came to pitchers. He was followed by Bill Lee, who was a loud and colorful guy. They call him the Spaceman. Bill Lee won 17 games. It was a great 17 games for 3 straight seasons with the Red Sox. For a left-hander, that's pretty good pitching. And let's see who else they had. They had Reggie Cleveland, Rick Wise, 2 above-average pitchers that, although not Hall of Fame type pitchers, they could give you a good game. And that's what I remember about how the season was going to start, and looking forward to how good they were going to become. But the one thing that I didn't pay a lot of attention to was the competition in that division was fierce. The Yankees were a very good team and much improving under Billy Martin. And the Orioles, of course, are always dangerous. And along comes opening day at Fenway Park. Everything starts, and what you think happens? The beginning of 162 games, every team's tied for first place. So I was really smiling. I like the opening day when everybody's in first place. And what happened to that opening day game? Let me see. I got to get to my notes. They started to lose. They stumbled from out of the gate. That's what my notes say here. The Red Sox stumbled out of the gate here in 1976. Instead of building on the momentum I have written down here from the previous October, they struggled to be consistent. Pitching, which it carried them through most of 75, was terrible. The offense, despite all the all-star power, they just couldn't deliver hits. And by early May, the Red Sox had a 10-game losing streak, and all of a sudden, on May 11th, the Red Sox find themselves in last place, and everybody's depressed. I can tell you. I remember not watching them for a while because you can't watch a team that loses one game after another. It's pretty amazing. For a city expecting another pennant race, it was impossible to believe, quite frankly. And the Boston press, I remember, was on them unmercifully. If 75 was a magical season, 76 was a nightmare. They had a lot of pressure on them because the expectations were high. There was a lot of talent on the club. And Darryl Johnson always was the steady figure when asked. I remember talking about it. He always stayed calm, and he didn't panic. And when you listen to the players' interviews, they weren't panicking either, because they felt like there was plenty of time to make it up. 76, I remember, was probably the 70s were the height of the Red Sox-Yankees feud. these two teams didn't like each other all the way back from the Babe Ruth trade, and they hated each other in 1976. In 76, the rivalry was beginning to resemble the battles the fans remember today. On May 20th at Yankee Stadium was a big day. The game had already been played, was being played with the same intensity you would have with games in October. Every pitch counted, every slide. They tried to knock people out. They were just playing hard baseball. Well, here's the play. The play that changed everything. Lou Piniella charged towards home plate. Carlton Fisk stood his ground. There was a violent collision. Players rushed towards home. Within seconds, both benches had emptied. I've written down here. The field became a sea of uniforms. Punches were thrown. Players wrestled one another to the ground. In the middle of the chaos was Boston's pitcher, Bill Lee. Craig Nettles grabbed Lee, threw him to the ground, and pulled his arm out of his socket, his pitching arm. And that was when the Red Sox, who were losing and not playing well, that's when I personally thought the season was over. The injury damaged Lee's shoulder. He missed several weeks, and he was never the pitcher the rest of the season. His arm never recovered. And I think the Red Sox, and historians will back me up here, point to that afternoon as probably one of the defining moments of 1976. I'm 10 minutes into a 15-minute broadcast, and I'm in May. So like I said, it's going to be a two-part story. We're going to continue with 1976 next week, but let's go on and use our 15 minutes, because the next story I remember, and I think all baseball fans remember, was the trade the Red Sox made after the Bill Lee injury. Charlie Finley, the colorful owner of the Oakland A's, stunned baseball by agreeing to sell several of his big stars. Among them were Hall of Fame reliever Rollie Fingers, Gold Glove outfielder Joe Rudi. Boston Red Sox believed they could strengthen their club by getting Fingers and Joe Rudi in a trade. And I still remember them being photographed in Red Sox uniforms. They never ended up playing a game for the Red Sox, but there was a lot of publicity, and their pictures in Red Sox uniforms were all over the newspapers, I remember. Anyway, Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball, stepped in and voided the transactions. Kuhn ruled that baseball's best players simply could not be sold to the highest bidder. And when you think about that quote, and you think about today's baseball, where all baseball players are sold to the highest bidder, it's pretty funny. It's the way baseball was, but Kuhn didn't like it, and he voided the deal. Fingers doesn't go to the Red Sox. Rudi doesn't go to the Red Sox. The Red Sox now, after losing Bill Lee and suffering a 10-game losing streak, are just not anywhere near first place as they enter mid-season. That's one of the things I remember. But even depressed as I was, knowing they were so far back, the Red Sox didn't quit. Louis Tiant started to pitch well. Freddie Lynn started to hit well, and Jim Rice always hit well that whole season. Carlton Fisk was playing well, and Yastrzemski even was playing well. And slowly the Red Sox began to climb back into the race. Season wasn't over as the second half approaches. But we're going to talk about next something that occurred, which was really sad in Red Sox history. The passing of Tom Yawkey as we approach the 15-minute mark in this podcast. And I think this is a good place to stop talking about 76. We'll go over the second half of 76, the death of Tom Yawkey, the Red Sox fighting to get back into the race, although obviously they fell short in 1976. But we will go over the second half of 1976 in next Sunday's broadcast, because my 15 minutes are up. I want to thank everybody for stopping by and listening to the show today. And we will be back next Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, and we'll finish 1976. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.